Okay, first off, we're gonna call the meeting to order and consider the approval of the minutes for the May 15th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and take any action necessary.
I make the motion we approve the minutes.
I second.
Take a vote.
Aye. I agree.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, item 2 is public comments. So we'll open the meeting to that. There's some guidelines. You can speak for up to 2 minutes. Planning and Zoning Commission members are not allowed to respond. Anybody that would like to make comments during this time? Evidently not. We're going to close that and move to item number 3. Consider request from Primacy Builder LLC for approval of a new final replat for the Tennyson Crossing Addition, Zone PD1, on 3.677 acre tract for development of 44 townhome lots on the north side of Tennyson Road, approximately 375 feet east of Jefferson Avenue.
All right, so we're ready for the first item. Would you read that, Ronnie? The replat. So because we have a long agenda of 5 cases, which is pretty unusual, they are chained together one behind the other, and so when I get to the end of each case, I'll stop. You can have the vote start up again. Yes, sir.
This is item 3, and to consider a request from Primacy Builders LLC for approval of a new final replat for the Tennyson Crossing Addition, zoned PD1, on a 3.677 acre tract for development of 44 townhome lots on the north side of Tennyson Road, approximately 375 feet east of Jefferson Avenue. So we're to consider this request for this approval. Are there any comments from staff?
Yes, sir. So this is the first case. It's a very interesting case, and there may not be too many of you that remember it, but it was already approved as a plat. It was filed at the courthouse, and then when they began to construct this property, it had a site plan, it was a PD, it had everything, townhomes. The detention pond was on the wrong side of the property, and they had already recorded the plat. So that meant that the whole thing had to come back, because in order to move the detention pond, they had to reorder all of the lots. And so that caused they didn't change really even the site plan was the same, except for the fact that the plat changed. And so we had to redo it on the final plat. So it's on 3.677 acres. And it did require an offsite easement last time. This time it has an offsite easement for sewer that'll be recorded too. It's slightly different configuration, so it has to be recorded again. No. There we go. Okay. So on the left is what the map looks like right now. As you see, all those lots are already recorded, and the detention pond's on the left-hand side. The new replat is on the right-hand side, and it does differ, just very slightly, which is why it has to come back through the process. It's not something that I can approve, because it has all those lots. And so it needs to go back through the process so that they can re-record it. And it's a replat because it was platted the first time. And that's all I have.
Okay, as I'm seeing in this, the plat meets the requirements of section 154 of the subdivision regulations of the city of Mount Pleasant. Staff has recommended the approval of the final plat with the following condition: that the applicant contain off-site sanitary sewer easement, and that the document number filed of record with Titus County be included on the plat prior to its filing, previously done last time with a slight revision of this replat. That all utility and site construction be completed and accepted prior to any issuance of certificates of occupancy for the townhome unit. So, then I'm understanding this meets all the guidelines from the city, with the exception of these two items, and they have to be completed and filed before acceptance. Is that?
Well, you're actually, the off-site easement, before the plat is actually signed, it will be given a number at the county, but typically it's an easement that just gets signed because it's off to the off the screen on the right-hand side is where it comes in, and it is given a recording number. So on the Mylar that gets signed after council approves it, that little number is put in. So we don't do that until it's approved, basically.
Okay, so upon the acceptance and approval of the council, then it becomes official. Is that correct? And accepted by the city?
Yes, sir. And the plat, the off-site easement gets recorded after they approve the plat, and the number gets put in on the Mylar so that it's actually stamped. So you can, they're put married together, if you will, for anytime somebody pulls it up on the records, but we don't do it ahead of time.
Okay, I have only one other question then, and that was, perhaps 6 months ago or so, we discussed a plat, and there was a real sticking point about rear entry for emergency vehicles and that sort of thing. Does this include that, or does this rear entry have any bearing upon that? Are you familiar with the plat that I'm talking about, the apartments? I think it was on Tennyson Road, and yet the rear entry was going to be from almost a dead-end street on the back side. Does that?
That was before I got here. That was not this plat, because this one already went through and got completely approved. If you'll see, there are very, very minor changes between what was actually approved and recorded, primarily the detention pond and the way that the frontage of the lot was having to be configured. That's really the only difference in this one all the way through.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking, well, obviously I'm thinking about an earlier plat, but it was a considerable discussion about the rear entry.
There was one that people talked to me about on Tennyson further down, I think, that had some issues, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. It's not this one.
All right, so I'm assuming we just need a vote. City staff is recommending the approval and the process to move it on through council. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then let's vote and record that as to the approval. Yeah, I'm trying to get the number. Oh, RP 2025-08. and that's the final replat for Tennyson Crossing addition. So at this point, I'm calling for a motion to approve this document for, from the city.
I make the motion to approve, on the following conditions: that the applicant obtain an off-site sanitary sewer easement, and that the document number filed of record with Titus County be included on the plat prior to its filing. And the condition that all utility and site construction be complete and accepted prior to any issuance of certificates of occupancy for the townhome units.
I second.
I second.
All right, we're gonna call for a vote.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The item is approved by unanimous vote. We're moving on to item 4, consider request from Vaughn Zimmerman, property owner, for the approval of preliminary plat for the Pleasant Point Apartments, being a 9.04 acre property in the commercial zoning district described as Mount Pleasant City Block 330, Lot 1, Tract 1, and Lot 3B, Block 332, and addressed as 1708 West 16th Street.
This is also an interesting case. We have lots of interesting cases for Alan's first meeting. This property was approved by City Council in late 2023 or so, I believe, for council to support that it be a Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs tax credit project. The city did vote on it. It then went to the state TDHCA, where last year it was approved on according to their criteria, as a live project, and so it is back, and their site, which had been already picked previously at 1708 West 16th Street, and it is already zoned appropriately. It does require a sewer line off-site easement as well, and it will need TxDOT approval for the final installations of the utilities and the driveways. Although I believe they may already have their driveway approval, but I always put that in as a condition because TxDOT does, of course, have the final say, it being on 16th Street. So the preliminary plat is cocked sideways, but the area map shows its configuration. It's done that way so you can actually see it. But the property, as you can see, is where it is in its current configuration. It doesn't show it, but it does on the preliminary plat. You'll see that line through it. That is a gas line. They have had to design around it for their entry and also the siding of their apartment buildings, and it has a clubhouse. Let's see. The site plan comes next. So this is the preliminary plat, is just that this is the configuration of the property, that it will have this on it, but there is a site, just to kind of clear this up, there's a site plan approval that actually goes into all the elements, the landscaping and that. This is in more detail. It's 60 apartment units and in 3 buildings with a clubhouse, and their attenuated parking, a detention pond and on the property. And like I said, they had to design around the gas line. So staff is recommending this is approval as well.
I really have 2 questions. Everyone, exactly, give me a location of this, the exact location.
1708 West 16th, and McCoy's is shown on the map as well.
I would like to hear from the gentleman if he's got something to say.
That is, he's right about the offsite easement. However, they are responsible for bringing the sewer and constructing the sewer along the right of way. So technically, the completion of the sewer has to be a part of this because sewer is not adjacent without them bringing it. And they're bringing it, from, left to right along 16th. At one point, they were trying to get it from the rear of the property, but that didn't work. They had another property owner, so.
Let me just go through this so that everybody's on the same page, including me. An application has been submitted by Vaughn Zimmerman on behalf of property owner Pleasant Point LP for approval of preliminary plat of the Pleasant Point Apartments at 1708 West 16th Street and described as Mount Pleasant City Block 330, Lot 1, Track 1, and Lot 3-B, Block 332. This property was previously approved by the City Council per Resolution 2023-19, December 19, 2023, in support of a tax credit affordable rental housing apartment complex application on this property, which was subsequently awarded by the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs last year. The city agreed to provide a financial contribution in the form of reduced building or development permit fees of $250 for the proposed development when the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs awarded the 9% housing tax credit to the developer. The property is a 9.04 acre tract of land on 16th Street and is zoned commercial, which allows multifamily development. The developer proposes building a total of 60 units in 3 buildings comprised of equal number of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments on the property along with a clubhouse. A site development plan will also be considered for approval concurrently with the preliminary plat. Because a public sewer line extension is required to be extended from the current West Ferguson Road termination some 1,000 feet to culminate at the east property line of the property's frontage. The final plat for this project will not be considered until the 8-inch sewer line is constructed and accepted by the city. A 6-inch water line is available on 16th Street frontage. The preliminary plat meets the requirements of Section 154 of the subdivision regulations of the City of Mount Pleasant. Staff recommended approval of the final plat with the following conditions. These are the conditions that you just discussed about TxDOT approval be received for driveway and infrastructure improvements within their right-of-way along 16th Street prior to the start of construction. That all civil construction plans be approved by DRC staff prior to the start of construction. And a final plat be approved prior to building permit inspection or certificate of occupancy. Any comments?
Doesn't seem like the city is asking, or their staff is asking for any easement paperwork.
Because it's in the right of way now.
All right, any motion, to approve?
I make the motion to approve, the final plat based on the following conditions recommended by staff, that TxDOT approval be received for driveway and infrastructure improvements within their right-of-way along 16th Street prior to the start of construction. Condition 2, that all civil construction plans be approved by DRC staff prior to the start of construction. And Condition 3, that a final plat be approved prior to building permit inspections or certificate of occupancy issuance.
I second.
Vote as required?
Aye.
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 Aye. What I'm seeing is, several diagrams, several pages of, illustrations of it looks like the layout of the facility, its access. I don't see, are there any requirements on here, final requirements by TxDOT? I thought I saw something at the very end that required that.
Lynn, has the city or the state already looked at this when they were looking at the sewer line? Have they already looked at approval for the driveway? They've already looked at the infrastructure?
So this is a separate case, and so basically it has the same conditions, they're just general, so that kind of conditions it. In other words, it's approved, but they have to do it, and that's just like they're basically the same ones as they were on the preliminary plat. It's the same piece of property. This is a requirement for a site plan approval, which is part of the requirement, not on the actual property configuration, which the final plat will follow the preliminary plat, but this is a site plan that's required prior to any building permit being issued. So it is for 60 apartment units, and they have 3 buildings. The club house, it's owned commercial already. We already went over that and kind of the brief history of what it is. It's a little more complex on what it actually shows as far as the project is concerned, because according to our code, the site plan approval process takes in a lot of elements that the preliminary plats, just the outline of the property and some general alignments. This and is what actually is going to be built on the property, and because it's multifamily, that's when our code says that planning gets involved. So we do site plan approvals for commercial development all the time that do not come to planning. Only if they are more multiple uses and buildings on a property, or multifamily, or some sort of a multi-use kind of, so it's hard for you to see, but we have gone through this at the DRC level at the same time that we did the preliminary plat, and the construction plans, which you don't have, which is a huge submittal, showing the elements, the width of the pavement, the width of the fire line, the distances, the curb, all of those details were almost impossible for anybody to see on the screen or even on a printed without looking at the plans themselves. But the DRC has gone through all of this, and we, I think that they are making one small change in the actual construction plans are about to be approved. But the site plan itself with the configuration of the buildings meets all the codes involved. Additionally, our code, as part of the site plan, discusses landscaping and lighting. There's a photometric plan in that packet too, which I didn't show on the screen, but we asked for a lighting plan because we don't have any photometric requirements. But they submitted a lighting plan that I've seen before, lighting plans before, and it looks fine, even though we don't have any standards for it. Their landscaping that they have shown, and they, if you see their code requirements that they've checked off, that exceeds what our requirements are. I did not include all the plant lists because it's a very extensive plant list for all the trees and shrubs, but it meets, actually exceeds our code. So the project meets all of the applicable and codes, and is way above on a lot of the things, including the landscaping.
Okay, so we're actually reviewing and approving item 5, which is an application has been submitted by Vaughn Zimmerman on behalf of property owner Pleasant Point LP for approval of a site plan for the Pleasant Point Apartments at 1708 West 16th. The site plan approval is required due to its being a multifamily project. The property is zoned commercial, which allows multifamily development. This property was previously approved in 2023 as an affordable rental tax credit housing apartment complex application, and has been subsequently awarded by the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs last year. It is situated on a 9.04 acres on West 16th near the intersection of West Ferguson Road. The developer proposes building a total of 60 units in 3 buildings comprised of equal numbers of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments on the property along with the clubhouse. This site development plan is considered for approval currently with the preliminary plat. The site plan contains 3 sheets depicting landscape, photometric, and building elevation submittals, all of which were reviewed by the city's Development Review Committee and found to meet or exceed requirements for types and arrangement of landscaping, building locations, arrangements, and parking and materials. There is a gas line that traverses the property, making it challenging to design, but the project fits neatly into the site. Site plan meets the requirements of city development standards. Staff recommends the approval of this with the following conditions, identical with those on the preliminary. So here you're back to text approval to be received for driveway and infrastructure improvements with their right-of-way along 16th Street, Highway 67, prior to the start of construction. That all civil construction plans be approved by DRC staff prior to the start of construction. That a final plat be approved prior to building permit inspection or certificate of occupancy of insurance. So this is basically what we just looked at, and this is includes the same restrictions and or, not that they're necessarily restrictions, but the same approval of the text dot approval has to be done. the civil construction plans approved by the city, and the final plat be approved prior to building permit inspections or certificate of occupancy. So those are three contingency, is that correct?
Yes, sir. And this is standard language that's put in place just to make sure that everything's clear to the applicant, and when the completion of the entire project, that it was clear that these had to happen before anything's completely finalized out. But the site plan, it meets and exceeds what the city standards are. TxDOT's already approved, and if they've given their final letter, I may not have it in the packet, but it is forthcoming. So that's just standard language that's been in place with all the cases from prior to me coming, just to make sure that everybody's clear, particularly when the preliminary plat and the site plan are together. If it wasn't for the sewer line that is actually got to be constructed first. So the sewer line has to be constructed before the final plat can be approved. All three of these could come forward at the same time. Because if you remember, we did Christus all three at the same meeting, because the Christus sewer thing was completely out there. And they had 1, 2, and 3. They had preliminary site plan and final plat approval of all of it at one time. This one, because they are having to construct the sewer line and bring it in and have it be completed, that can't start until the preliminary plat has been approved by y'all. And so that's the only difference. And that's why those are conditions. So it kind of makes it clear what comes first, what comes second, what has to happen before it's complete.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve SP 2025-02, site for the Pleasant Point Apartments, with the contingency items that are listed as 1, 2, and 3 as a final, would be including this in the final approval.
I make the motion to approve.
I second.
Aye.
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 With a full majority, the item is approved. Moving on to item 6. Item 6 is SUP 2025-02. Hold a public hearing and consider request from Anna Castillo, property owner, for the approval of a specific use permit to allow for a church within a single-family residential district, being a 0.350 acre property described as lots 3 and 4, block 16, Sunrise Edition, and addressed as 1306 East 8th Street. Hold a public hearing, which is what we're here for, to consider the request from Anna Castillo, property owner, for the approval of the specific use permit.
So this case came forward before P&Z, before I arrived in Mount Pleasant in April of 2024, I believe. It has changed some in the plans, their site plan that was submitted. So the existing property, 1306 East 8th, had a church on it that had been in the neighborhood, in this residential neighborhood, for some time. It subsequently was sold. I think the principals in the church that had been active, became elderly and maybe even were deceased. But it was sold, and it was bought by Anna Castillo and on behalf of the Oasis of Blessings Church, which is an out-of-town church, I believe. So they owned the property for some time, but probably sometime they did receive their, I'd looked it up, their certificate of occupancy at the church in 2016. I was not clear as to whether they were actually holding church in that building or not at the time, but I know within a couple years prior to it burning in December of 2023, they had been holding services there. Our code requires a specific use permit anytime a church is located in a single-family residential district. And there are a number of conditions that need to be looked at. In other words, its impact on the residential area, the quality of life for the residents, the traffic, noise, and all of those kind of elements need to be considered, and that's why our code requires it to come to planning and zoning for your recommendation, and then city council has the final say. The previous case came to P&Z and it was voted down and voted not to recommend to P&Z, to city council, and then city council, when they heard it, they also voted it down, and they have brought it back. There's nothing in our code that I could find that says that you can't bring a case back. I did ask for our legal opinion from our city attorney. We have a city attorney in San Antonio, and so they advised that we move forward with this new case. So I met with them and tried to determine what the issues were the first time, and counseled them that they needed to come up with conditions that would address those issues the second time, since it's an older established neighborhood, and the chances were that the same neighbors were going to show back up. And you each have a copy of the responses that we've received in the last day from 4 of the neighbors who are not here, but they're very elderly, and most likely that, you know, if they're going to show up, they'll come to council. But you have their responses. That the time for the old case, the complaints were noise, traffic, and parking, and just basically neighborliness and the impact of the church on their quality of life with loud music, late hours. They did complain a lot about the late hours, and those comments that you have, they also refer to what they had experienced before the church burned in the couple of years that they were actively meeting. So when I met with the applicant, they did reduce the size of the building footprint. They agreed to limit the hours, and I put in some other conditions, including some noise issue or insulation to dampen the noise. So the area maps on the left, in blue, that was kind of an older overhead, and I think that you can still see where the church was. I think it's been demolished, but it's still, not sure if it can be completely cleaned up at that time. And you'll see that it's, you know, there's residential street. The park is directly behind it, and there's a street that goes into the park, and there's parking to the left as well, that the city owns. The kind of that blue circle on the right-hand side is a buffer map. Those are the people that live within 200 feet of the subject property, and the red X's mark the 4 responses that you're looking at. Now, they can continue to bring in responses from now until council. There's no cutoff date, but these are the 4 that we've received so far. On the left is a site plan that they have brought forward. The street, it does run north to south, and so the street access is at the bottom. You can see that there are parking spaces outlined. There are 12 parking spaces on that site. The original case that was voted down, they had a bigger footprint for the church than this, and the parking was pretty tight. So I basically told them, you got to fit the parking and adjust your building, and they did. Made them put in landscaping, since it's a complete redo of this of the site. They have shown their seats, and I believe there's 46 in that. So they're required to have one parking space per 4 seats per our code, which accounts for 12, so that would limit the amount of people they could have. One of the other conditions that you'll see, it has to do with if there's overflow parking, because we can't really, I mean, if there's extra people that come in cars, you can't really regulate that, but they are not be parking on the street. They're supposed to be of the park, so that they're not adding to the neighborhood's congestion. You'll see it's 3,300 square feet of heated and cooled area for a total with the patio of 3,628 on that lot. So here are the conditions, that they develop it according to the site plan, that they add increased soundproofing insulation when it's constructed to minimize any noise, because their music was one of the things that the neighbors complained about, that they are not allowed to have any service that extends past 9 o'clock in the evening. And their regular services are only allowed on Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings, with a Thursday discipleship class. And then they're only to have one monthly evening worship service. That is the maximum. And you'll see my discussion, the parking, they have to have 12 spaces, and that they have to put any overflow parking to be in the city parking lot, because there's a city lot. It's very oversized. One additional condition had to do with the food preparation area. Apparently, my understanding is that the fire likely started in a kitchen. They were actually using that building, from our understanding, for people living in that building or sleeping in that building, and that's where the next condition comes from. But we also wanted to make it clear that if they were going to use, and some churches do have kitchens, that they have the grease trap that's side kitchen, and that they have a fire suppression hood in the kitchen. They have indicated that they were not going to cook, and they took out the kitchen in the site plan, but I left the condition in there just in case it ever came up. They were not allowed to use it as any residential or shelter use of people to stay overnight. In the previous case, my predecessor had some similar conditions, but he mentioned they could only have people living there if they had fire approval, and I just took it out altogether and said no, that it's not appropriate. They cannot use it as a residential area at all. And then the final condition is that they must obtain a building permit before they, obviously that's city regulation, but again, you'll notice the conditions some of them are just to make it really clear as to where we are on things. And so that one's in there, and the 4 negative responses you have for you. That's all I have. There's no recommendation either way on this.
Okay, I'd like to read through part of this, and then there's a good bit of it that's in your stipulations, and then I want to make a comment based on our last decision on this item. The applicant, Anna Castillo of Church Oasis of Blessings, is requesting approval of a specific use permit to allow for the construction of a church within the SF2 single-family residential district. This property is adjacent to R.L. Journey Park and is addressed as 1306 East 8th Street, case number SUP 20252. The request was to rebuild the church after it was destroyed by fire in December of 2023, and a 2024 specific use permit case was initiated. According to the Titus County Central Appraisal District, the structure was classified as a church, meaning commercial. The April 2024 SUP case was voted down by both P and Z and City Council due to the objections of the neighbors. Following a year-long waiting period, the owners have resubmitted their application to rebuild the church at a similar footprint and have modified the parking lot, the interior details. Additionally, they have agreed to the following conditions to help mitigate the neighborhood complaint. Those following conditions, which you just ran through, I concur with that. On June 18th, 2025, staff mailed 10 public notices to all property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. Additionally, the notice was published in the Mount Pleasant Daily Tribune and posted on the city's website as required by state statute. As of the date of this report, staff has not received any notices regarding the applicant's request. The approval of the specific use permit is a discretionary act and requires approval of a simple majority vote of the city council pending on the recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission. Staff will be available at the meeting to answer questions. My comments are basically personal in that we discussed this earlier on, P and Z, a year ago, and we voted it down at that time. It's in a bad location. There's a Journey Park across the street, I believe. Now, I don't know what hours or times or what kind of schedule. That's a soccer park, I think, isn't it? Okay. I don't know if there's any conflicts there, but my first inclination is we need to not cater to, but we need to bend in favor of the park area and the use of the park. I have a difficulty in approving this, and I don't want it to be personal, but I just think that the building's not adequate, the property size in general is not adequate. I don't think they can park enough vehicles, and I don't want to have to go over there and count chairs and cars. These things just don't fit to me. I would like to encourage them to find another location in Mount Pleasant. There's got to be some property somewhere available. This property, I'm not sure of the value, but from what I hear, residential lots are to some degree in demand. Again, I don't know much about this location, but I should call for a motion before I say I'm going to vote. So I'd like to have a motion on the. Oh, okay. Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I got ahead of the schedule. We need to open for a public hearing. Anybody here has a comment or a concern? At this time, we'd like to hear that. No response, nobody here. So we're gonna close that public hearing, Wes, and we're gonna open to a vote to approve or disapprove of this request. So I'm calling for a vote at this time.
Yes, I think you do. I'm not an attorney, and we don't have one present, but it makes a mess.
We need to send our position to the council. So I think we have to record a vote. That makes sense? Okay.
I make the motion to disapprove.
I second that.
Aye.
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 The recommendation has been rejected and turned down, and we would forward our position on to the city council as a no. moving on to item number 7, hold a public hearing and consider request from William Edward Aaron's, property owner, and Vincent G. Hubinger on behalf of CTG One LLC for the approval of a specific use permit to allow for a 100-foot telecommunication tower within the commercial zone district, being a 0.73 acre property described as Lot 5, Mount Pleasant City, Block 310D, and addressed as 1706 West Ferguson Road.
So, this concludes the rather unusual lengthy meeting. It's just great for Alan because he gets to see a little of everything. The second specific use permit on the agenda, which we don't even do very many of those in a given year, much less 2 at one meeting. This also, our code has required that P&Z make a recommendation and City Council weigh in on whether a cell tower is needed, and to weigh the effects on the neighboring properties carefully, which is what the specific use process is for. In this case, of course, our code is pretty old, and cell towers used to be rather controversial. Now everybody carries one around in their pocket, and you can't get good service if you don't have towers. Since the early days, but it's still appropriate to consider carefully, so you don't have so many cell towers. They're not especially nice to look at all over the place. But the siting requirements in our code are extensive. There are pages and pages in our ordinance for what they are charging the companies to show are necessary, and you have a fairly substantial packet that they presented of information. I don't think I had her copy all of it because it's pretty thick. I have it, but they have done a lot of studies. They know exactly what cell facilities are available in Mount Pleasant. You'll see a map in a little bit. They have a lot of information that they also have to provide to the FCC, because that's regulated by the federal government as well. 100 feet is the highest tower that is allowed in our city, and I'm not sure if it's requirement to be under that for the FCC too. It is not anywhere near the airport or anything like that. So all of the siting requirements have been extensively studied, but I haven't gone through them with you because we'd be here all night. We did. This particular property is a commercial, so there are no houses that it's not near a residential area. It's on a busy street. It already has a small business on the site, and the tower is tucked back inside the site, and it's going to be a portion of the use on the property, but it isn't the main site. It's kind of hidden, as hidden as you can get a cell phone tower. So the conditions are that it be constructed per the site plan. You'll see that in a minute, that they have driveways and parking areas paved. Their initial submittal, there is a driveway that goes kind of back into the property already, and it was not shown on their site plan as all of it being paved. But that's a requirement, and I've since talked to them. They're revising the plans. They'll have the plans for council, but they didn't have them for P&Z, but it's a condition. And that they'll put a screening fence up. They agreed to that, but I also wanted some landscaping. So they'll put in some drought tolerant landscaping, some of the grasses and those kind of higher bushes, sage, that will kind of mitigate the effect of having kind of a screened, it's a fence that has the, chain link with the slats. It's still, of course, you can't screen 100 feet, but at least it'll add an element. Our code doesn't really require it, but they agreed to it, so. We got no responses back, and when you see the map, you'll see why. It's in the middle of everything else, so there are no people that really care whether there's a cell phone tower there or not. It's where that orange box is and the red X is where it's going. And I think, I can't remember the name of that business that's there. Yeah, this is C, yep. Yeah, it's, and you'll see that the paved, driveway going straight in is paved, and then we're requiring them to pave it all the way in. So this is the site plan, and this particular, so they even had their own PowerPoint in addition to all the documents that they brought in, proving that there is not adequate cell phone coverage in Mount Pleasant, and no towers would be available to site any more towers. In other words, they couldn't get water tower coverage or, you know, a place to put cell phone towers. There's none available. So they have all that. I didn't give it to you. But they also did their own PowerPoint. And I used some of the slides. This is one of them. The area with the red circle, that's around where the tower is. And you can see that it's this square that's in the corner. And the additional parking area that they're going to put in, that I'm requiring that it be paved, it's not shown here. All the land uses around it are commercial, and they aren't going to take out any additional tree cover that they are able to put the tower in where that spot was. So I did show this because it's interesting. On the left is Mount Pleasant and its tower configurations that provide us our cell phone service. The blue X's or crosses are the towers, and then the green area is the coverage area. On the left is where we are. The star is the proposed area for the new tower. On the right is the coverage map that shows what that's going to look like when we have it. If you see, there's a gap there, and it fills it. So they're required to prove that there is a need for a tower, and I think that pretty much shows it. Especially if you live in that area or work in that area and you can't, and you keep getting bumped off. That's all I have. Staff is recommending this.
View. The applicants, owner William Aarons and CCTG1 LLC, are requesting approval of a specific use permit to allow for the construction of a 100-foot telecommunications tower on property along West Ferguson, which is zoned commercial. The city zoning code in chapter 155.50 details how telecommunication towers are to be treated with evaluation through the specific use permit process to evaluate safety, aesthetics, their necessity, suitability to the area, and applicants are requested to submit site details. The subject property is a commercially zoned district in an underserved area in the city for such towers. It will be set back away from the roadway and is not adjacent to any residential property. Towers are limited to no greater than 100 feet in height. Staff is recommending approval with the following conditions: to be constructed according to the accompanying site plan, with all driveways and parking surfaces to be concrete. The screening fence will have landscape buffering facing with street frontage. Building permits are required prior to any construction. On June 18, 2025, staff mailed 12 public notices to all property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. Additionally, the notice will publish in the Mount Pleasant Daily Tribune and posted on the city's website as required by state statute. As of the date of this report, staff has not received any notices regarding the applicant's request. The approval of the subject use permit or specific use permit is a discretionary act and requires approval of a simple majority vote of the city council pending a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Staff will be available at the meeting to answer questions. I don't see anybody here to comment publicly. So we're just gonna open that. If there are any comments or any discussion, anybody has the opportunity at this point to do that. No one here, no compliment, about it. So we're gonna move past that and close that and ask the commission to vote to approve or disapprove. We just need a motion to vote.
I make the motion to approve based on the 3 conditions as laid out by city staff.
I second.
Aye.
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 Vote was unanimous to approve, and to forward to the council for action. At this time, I guess it's a report from, the planning director's report.
Yes, sir. We have been, pretty busy. I don't have any specific, items to bring forward today. We have done, we have a number of minor plats, consolidation of lots and splitting off lots that I'm working with the surveyors for and with, and we have so far only done one, and I will have a full list of those and their case numbers for you where they are, but they are the, and just for Alan's benefit, so the city code allows, city and state code allows for plat approvals to occur under certain circumstances as administrative plats. They don't come to P&Z. They are very limited in scope, so it has to be no more than 4 lots that are created, and those lots have to front on public streets and have access and cannot require any dedication of property or extension of utilities or anything like that. All of those have to be ruled on by P&Z. But if somebody has a piece of property and they want to split it in 2 pieces, if each lot is falls into the correct size and configuration for the zoning district and is looked at by DRC and has all the elements that it needs, in other words, it has water, sewer, and fire hydrant, all that, then it can be administratively approved by me, working with the surveyor to get exactly what we need on it, the language, and then I sign it instead of y'all approving it, and I just give you a list. And I've done that periodically. We had one that took a while, and it wasn't, while we were doing this, I didn't ever get it to you to discuss it. Some of them, and that one in particular, I probably will want to kind of show what it looks like maybe, or at least describe it so you have some idea. But they happen a lot on the interior lots. People will kind of move a lot line over, and if there's any issue with the development of the property, then DRC also hears it. So just so you know, that's coming. And we have a lot. Surveyors work with me, and they'll email me back and forth until they get what they want, and then eventually a client comes in and makes an application for a replat. They're replats, in other words. and then it moves forward. So we do have a number of those. We have, there was, I guess, I don't know if it ever made it here, but there was up on, kind of in, sort of the same area as the Pleasant Point Apartments, a little bit further down. From there, there's, I think it's a Shell station that they were gonna redo. That's been sitting on the back burner since before I got here. They have reactivated that whole thing to make it a truck stop and do some more paving, so that's coming forward. We did, finish with, Anderson Town Crossing. He did, pay for his building permits, and he's ready to go on that, and got his, he had asked for temporary construction access across city property at the lake so that he could get his dirt pile near Atwoods moved down to the construction site. So he will be breaking ground on those apartments pretty quickly. And so that's going to be a big project for the city. But we continue to have people call. It's been pretty busy in the last month or two with people wanting to do various, even small, I guess, you know, they just might want to put a small addition on a business, add some extra parking, things like that. But we're seeing a lot of activity, so I think things are starting to move on the development side. So I'm hoping that it's not a 5-case meeting every month for you all, but I believe we'll probably have more moving forward. I do not have anything in the pipeline that I know of for August yet, so you may not have a meeting in August, since usually it takes a while to get to you. I haven't had any applicant come in of you, Regina. I don't believe we've gotten anybody that's to the point of bringing in something that will actually make it by August, but we should have a fair amount of activity moving forward in the next, you know, through the fall. That's all I have.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I know the committee does. I have a couple of questions, or just in general comments. A number of people ask me what's going on with the city in the way of permits and or new construction, and a lot of times I find that I'm inadequate to answer that. As the code department or the permit issuance, have they ever thought about once a month publishing something in the newspaper? We've had 30 permits or 40 permits, and I know nobody wants to know
City council gets that report, and it's possible we could put it on our website.
I think that'd be encouraging, so they'd have an avenue, you know. Now, I agree, nobody wants to know about Joe's bathroom or Tom's garage, but just a note, you know, that say that this is in the works. Because in the last year and a half, there's been so much discussion about adequate housing, permit. Mount Pleasant needs that. And in the last 6 months, goodness, it looks like it's running out our ears. There's just several big projects that are in the works. I think people ought to know that. Not the details, but that there's a lot of activity going on. And
I like that idea. We already have the report that and of course, I agree with you. We don't need, like you said, Joe's bathroom on there, but it wouldn't take me very long to just summarize in just a few sentences what people might be wanting to hear. We're coming, and we could work with administration to get us, you know, just even a little block on our planning and code and building website that just says, you know, building permit activity or something like, you know, X number of housing permits, X number of this, you know, just real limited and major projects. So, for example, Pleasant Point Apartments, because you know, once their building permits they're going to be getting their building permits pretty soon. So they'll be issued, they won't be able to occupy, and that's why that language was in there. And obviously, they have to bring the sewer line and construct it before they could have their certificate of occupancy, but people are gonna see those apartments going up. That's a good idea, thank you.
Well, I just, I hate to make this a personal thing, but I'm so tired of people telling me, well, have you gone through Sulphur Springs lately? And I think, yeah, I have. And we have kind of been at a disadvantage in that Sulphur Springs has developed an industrial park on I-30, which is very visible, and it has grown considerably. A lot of our activity has taken place on the south end of town, which you don't see that unless you're going to Pittsburgh, you know. Preferred, the trailer manufacturers, there's just a lot of activity that you don't really see here. It's not as just out in front like that, the Sulphur Springs thing. So I guess, I'm tired of telling them I don't know. Yeah, we just need to be a little more out there.
I love it. I love the idea, and I
You
think
know?
that's easy for us to do. We already have the information. I don't mind writing a little blurb every month.
Yeah, and the information's available because it has to come through, the permit has to come through you, and you've seen all of them. I just would like to see, us a little more visible, you know. The other thing, we discussed last time, or maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago, about a code review process, or going through our codes. Is anything happened to that? And I commented at that time that I wanted that public. I know it's hard to get people to show up, but I'd also like to be able to say, well, we did that, where were you? You know? But right now, I can't say either one. So are you looking at that, or is that?
It's
Yes.
on. It's in the works, but there are a couple things that have kind of derailed it. You may remember me telling you that the city spent $55,000 on a consultant. This is before I got here, under the previous administration, and had the zoning code revamped. And they also add part of the parks recreation portion redone to charge park fees, and they had that as part of what this consultant was doing. At about the time that they were about finished was when the upheaval happened and the council was replaced. And subsequent to that, nothing was brought forward. It's still out there. We still have it. And the second thing that happened was the state law changed, and I did check with our attorneys and to explore if there was any way we could get around the requirement to notify every single property owner in the city whose property might be rezoned or changed in any way their uses. So if you were going to create a new district, if you were going to change the requirements, for example, a general retail allows major auto repair right now, and we have a lot of smaller general retail kind of properties where it does not work. And so in the new zoning ordinance, that was considered. It's just, I've read it, I wasn't part of it, to change that so that you had to have a commercial zone property if you were going to have a major auto repair on it. But any person that had a general retail property in the city or leased it, in other words, you could occupy it but not own it, or own it, has to be notified by certified mail. And so that means every single district, if you were going to require that people pave their driveways to park on it, for example, if you wanted to do a new parking, because we don't have that in our current development standards or anything, they have to be notified if they're going to have any use that they currently have impacted in the future by a regulation like a zoning ordinance, they have to be notified. And that is very expensive, if you've ever sent a certified letter. That means not just all property owners, it's all property owners and all occupants. That means all renters too, or lessees, which becomes an astronomical task to do for staff, number one, but we have to marry the water bills and the ownership and get all those sorted out. You can't just send it to the property owner, or you can't just send it to the property. It has to be both. And they may be the same, they may not, they may be different. So somebody has to go through and parse all that, or we're doubling, so it's a very big task. That's the state that's requiring that. And I explored at some length with our legal folks any way around it. And basically there isn't. So for us to redo, cause our zoning ordinance is from '89, I believe. It's pretty outdated. We have some uses in there that don't even occur anymore, and we have some things that aren't even described. For example, car washes are called auto laundries, and so we just have a lot of updating. But anything that changes the rights that someone has on their property as of the day that it's going to change, they have to be notified officially by letter. And that there was no wiggle room. So that's kind of, I was going to do it incrementally, but it becomes so difficult to do that unless it's a very small place. So I was going to start with downtown at least, where it's a fairly small list of people who either own or lease, that we could work on downtown, because we don't have a downtown district. Right now, we have general retail in the area, in the Main Street. We have commercial in the area, in the Main Street. We have, I think there's a little multifamily and some neighborhood services, but we don't actually have a downtown district that has distinct development standards of what we want to see. So that made a good test case, and I gave that whole task to the Main Street folks to come up with some things they wanted to see downtown, but that's going to be a pretty substantial amount of postage if we ever get it to that way. So the answer to your question, Ronnie, is yes. I am still trying to work on ways to get that to happen, but the legislature's made it really hard. One thing that I do want to bring up is they actually started playing in the city sandbox this year. And as of the 1st of September, they are requiring every city in the state, anytime there's a zoning case or even a specific use permit, which is a type of zoning, we have to place signs on the subject property noting the case number and when it will be heard, which means we have to order signs and we can either make the applicant do it, or we have to do it. Well, if I have to chase the applicants around making sure that they do something that the state says that we're responsible for, we might as well do it. So the state keeps adding more and more requirements on cities that they have to follow, and that's an example. So is the postage. So we're trying.
Oh, I think you're doing a great job. I just want to blow our horn a little bit. And the one thing I tell those people that jump on me about Sulphur Springs, we have something very unique that they don't have and won't have. Our airport is currently going through an expansion. There's a big demand for hangar space. Sulphur Springs Airport is very limited. The runway length abuts a lake. They're not going to drain that lake and fill that up and expand that runway. We have a real advantage there. And I constantly tell people, if we're searching for, seeking, or trying to make a good impression, the kind of company that comes here, I promise you, you'll pick them up at the airport, not the bus station. And that is just, we never sell that. And there's so many, Scott Glover's got a museum out there, it's phenomenal, truly phenomenal. But the asset is the length of the runway and the facility. Our other assets are the expansion that local people are doing in their personal facilities. I mean, you and your wife have gone through a year and a half of a major expansion. And, I don't know, I guess people don't get tired of listening to me, but I'm proud of those things. And they're assets. And they're better than Sulphur Springs.
We have a new Main Street person who came on board about a month ago, and she also is doing some kind of marketing communications, social media kind of things. And so in my previous position with the city of Sweetwater, I was actually operations director too, and the airport was one under my purvey. I found myself as an airport manager, not knowing anything about an airport, so I had to learn all that. And you're absolutely 100% correct about our airport. And of course, Paul he's a great front and center person, but he's so busy because it is a fantastic airport. We do need to probably highlight, and he is the #1 economic development driver in the community. But people don't know that because unless you fly, you don't realize how important it is. But I might talk to Candace about maybe making some effort to try. And you're right about blowing your own horn, because we don't do it, nobody else is either. And so that is a very good point, and he is actually working right now on getting all the dirt and everything ready. They're getting more places to build, more hangars, and we could use all the publicity we can get. So it's not in my wheelhouse to actually do that because it's not under planning, but I can certainly suggest that we make that kind of a big deal. And I know the city manager's working on that because he had Paul give a presentation a couple city council meetings ago about the expansion, and he used a drone footage and some pictures and stuff like that to try and show people who are present in council. But it probably needs to be even more visible because most people don't even tune into the council meeting.
Well, we have great facilities. The airport obviously being one, and I promise you, those people that we want them to invest here, they're gonna fly into here. You're not gonna pick them up at the Greyhound station. Local people who have made major investments, they need those things to be accented along with their business. It all goes together. It all plays together. Okay, they're tired of listening to me, so let's adjourn.